Maybe you're just getting back into reading. Maybe you're a seasoned reader who is just feeling like they're getting lost in the algorithm of book content. Or maybe you're someone who is just tired of overhyped books they're seeing on the internet and wants to find a way to discover new books. No matter who you are, today we are going to be talking about how to find and hone in on your personal book and reading tastes. So with these 6 recommendations that I'll be talking about today, I'm hoping that you'll learn how to build a little bit more confidence in your book taste, how to not get lost in the sea of book influencers, and how to actually have some discernment and how to navigate the book recommendations you do get online, as well as ways to step out of your comfort zone to really figure out what you like in books. And I feel like recommendation number 6 is gonna start some conversation in the comments. I'm excited and nervous for that, but let's go ahead and get into the recommendations. And so number 1 is reflect on what you've actually enjoyed in the past. So there's gonna be a couple of tangible things that I want you to do. The first one is think about the books that you read in your childhood that you really enjoyed, whether you were reading those books for pleasure in childhood or if you were assigned those books in class. So for example, some of my childhood favorites include Avalon High, which has almost a direct parallel to one of my new favorite books of all time. I'm not going to say which one because it's a very popular, prominent series and it's kind of a spoiler if you haven't read the first one. And then another one is The Face on the Milk Carton. And this actually made me realize how much I like crime dramas, how much I like thrillers. And then we also have Judy B. Jones. Okay, I loved that series growing up, but I think part of the reason I loved that series so much is because the main character got an attitude. Okay, I realized I love protagonists with a very interesting personality and they're not afraid to give a little lip back, okay? And those all may seem like very broad ideas, but I promise you it's gonna help you try to narrow certain things down. And then the second thing that I want you to do is literally write down, pen and paper or notes on your phone, it's fine. Write down your top 10 to 12 books of all time. Having that tangible list in front of you, I bet you'll start to see some commonalities in theme, genre, mood, maybe even how the book ends, whether it's an open ending or you kind of feel satisfied at the end. But I also want you to write it down because I know this is going to be a little controversial for some people. Some people don't like AI, but having that list there, pop it into ChatGPT and say, hey, these are my favorite 10 books. What are the commonalities between these 10 to 15 books that you can tell me, whether it's theme, whether it's genre, maybe it's the type of protagonist. And then my third recommendation when it comes to reflecting on things that you have liked in the past or things that you currently like is to start a reading journal of some sort, okay? I'm not saying that it has to be a physical journal. It could be you actually writing reviews out on Goodreads, or it could be a physical reading journal, or like me, my version of a reading journal is this YouTube channel. Me having to talk about how I'm feeling about books, what I liked and what I disliked in books has actually really helped me hone in on my personal reading taste. And I understand that how people do that is going to be a little different, but I do think there is something about tangibly putting things down on paper or making a list. So that is number 1 because that is going to be the foundation for the rest of these recommendations. Okay, and then we have recommendation number 2. So maybe you're like, Brea, girl, I don't feel like doing all that homework, and that's okay. Even though I do have another homework assignment for you, this one is gonna take you like 5 minutes, okay? And so I know that we're talking about getting out of the algorithm, but I really do believe that if you curate your algorithm the correct way, you'll be served up the right content. But we are going to talk about that a little later. But I mention it because I was actually served up a TikTok about this guy who's created a quiz about what type of reader you are. And I think it's really interesting because he breaks everybody up into colors, and those colors are associated with how you want to feel when you finish a book? Do you want to feel like your mind was blown? Do you maybe want to feel like I'm cooler for reading that book? And so this assessment is called Read Your Color, readyourcolor.com. I will leave the link down below if you want to take the quiz. And it's the reading assessment that will get you reading books you love. And so I did take the assessment just so you guys can kind of get an idea of what type of results you'll get. And so I ended up being a purple reader, which means I am the unbound innovator, which is an unconventional thinker who thrives on experimental storytelling and genre-defying narratives. They read to challenge norms, stretch their imagination, and fuel radical creativity. And after finishing a book, I want to feel intellectually awakened and creatively invigorated. And I have a new way of glimpsing the world or seeing the world, which is really so spot on to me. And like I said, kind of transcends genre because I can get that feeling from a lot of different types of books, right? And so this quiz also then gives you some book recommendations that purple readers or whatever color reader you are would probably enjoy based on how you like to feel at the end of a book. I'll also say though, take this with a grain of salt. It will give you your top score, right? But it'll also see how you are kind of balanced through the other colors too, because while purple was my top score, I was also like 50% a red reader. So, I mean, it does give you a really good idea of what types of books that you probably gravitate towards. And I've never seen reading categorized this way, and it's something that I really am interested in. And so I would love if you do take the test, let me know what color you end up being and if you feel like it's accurate to you and how you like to feel about reading. But I think this is an amazing start to figure out what type of books that you actually like. But that is just one unique way that I've never seen before, so wanted to share that with you guys. I'm in no way affiliated with him. Just to make it clear, I did not create this quiz, but I just think it's so unique, so give it a try. And then recommendation number 3 is just gonna be browse books without a list, okay? And I want us to make this like a little adult field trip, okay? Follow me with the vision. So you're gonna take a couple of uninterrupted hours just for you, okay? And you are gonna plan to go get a latte or a nice little drink before or after you do this, or you're just gonna plan a little sweet treat. Maybe you plan to go get lunch by yourself. Whatever it is, it's gonna be like a little field trip. I want you to get excited about it, okay? So you are either gonna go to your local library or even your local bookstore, whatever is accessible to you, and you are gonna go in there and just browse the books, okay? But before you go and do that, I want you to spend the week prior avoiding book content, okay? So I don't want you to look at any book reviews. I don't want you to look at any like book hauls or book wrap-ups or anything like that. I want you to go in there kind of with just like a fresh mind and not having any preconceived recommendations or influence in your head before you go and browse the shelf. And then once you get in there, I absolutely want you to judge books by their cover, okay? That's what they're there for. You know, back in the day when we didn't have the internet, you picked up a book because you liked the cover. I also challenge you just to go and explore genres that you may not typically read. So maybe you are typically just straight romance. I want you to go into the fantasy. I want you to go into the sci-fi and see what you find. Pick up some books, read the back, and just see if there's anything that intrigues you. And this is where recommendation number 1 comes in handy, because you already have an idea of the types of tropes or the types of themes that you like in books. And so you can recognize those as you're reading the back of the books. And so that way you may end up finding something else that's outside of your typical genre or your typical reading taste that you may enjoy. You could even sit there and read the first chapter of the book if you want. Remember, this is your field trip, okay? You have a couple hours to do whatever you want to do. So just kind of make a day out of it. Take some leisurely time. I think we all deserve just to touch grass every once in a while and just disconnect from our phones, our computers, and just like our everyday life, and just like have some time for yourself. And I'm not saying that you can't do this with a partner or your kids. I think it would also be great to do that with them as well. But maybe you guys just kind of separate for a little while and then come back together and see what you guys have all picked up. Whatever it is, whatever brings joy to you to be able to do that, do that. And then recommendation number 4 is something that you can do as part of number 3, and that is ask for recommendations from your local librarian or the local bookseller. I've found that a lot of those people, obviously because it's their job, they have very niche recommendations and they know the ins and outs of a lot of different books. So again, if you can tell them the types of themes and tropes, the type of characters that you like, I bet you they can recommend you something that you've never heard of. And I'll give you an example. One of my local booksellers, I walk in there, he'll see me pick something up and he can tell me exactly what that book is about and say, oh, if you liked this book or this book, then you may like that. Or if you like certain tropes, let me show you something else in the store. And it just really blows my mind because I see him do that with everybody, no matter what genre they pick up. And a lot of the times what he ends up recommending them is completely outside of the genre that they were actually looking at before. And I've found some amazing books that way. And I know I hear some of you right now being like, Brea, I'm a shy girly. I do not want to be talking to these people when I go in the store. And that is absolutely fine. But a lot of bookstores do have recommendations from either the librarians or the booksellers themselves on display. So, you know, they'll usually have like a little card that says, Sarah recommends this because X, Y, and Z, or Jalen loves this because of whatever. So that's another way to get their recommendations without actually having to talk to them. But when you do that, I would just recommend, don't then go look on Goodreads to see what everybody else says. Just look at the back of the book, and if it sounds intriguing to you, then pick it up. And then number 5 is make reading more playful and allow yourself to experiment. If you're watching this video, then you may be someone who's already exposed to a lot of book content. And I think a lot of people right now are finding really interesting ways to create their TBRs, whether that's a TBR game, whether that's, you know, something experimental. But just because you're not a book influencer doesn't mean that you can't find new and fun and playful ways to create a TBR. And so I'm going to give you a few examples of things that I've done that I think are very easy for anybody to do, but can kind of expand your TBR. And so one way was reading popular books from the year that I was born. And when I tell you, I had a blast doing this. I think this is one of my favorite ways to find new books to read. And I love this too because I really just got to spend some time researching some of the pop culture that was happening that year that I was born, what TV shows were popular, what movies were popular, what the cost of living was back then, which was kind of depressing to think about compared to now. And I ended up finding a book that I think I gave 4.5 stars that way, which was Parable of the Sower by Octavia E. Butler, which I really loved. So I highly recommend trying that out. Another way to just kind of relinquish some control is to do a blind date with a book. You not only get the book sometimes, depending on where you find it, but you'll get little goodies. And this way someone else is choosing the book. You know what the genre is typically, you know a little bit about what the book is typically, but it's kind of a surprise to you, and you could probably find a book that you have never heard of before. I know a lot of bookstores provide this. There's a lot of small businesses out there that provide this. And I did that with a seller that's on TikTok. One of my good friends got a blind date with a book for me for Christmas. And while I didn't end up enjoying the book, I would have never picked that book up otherwise. And it allowed me to figure out other things I don't like in books so that I know for the future, if there are certain tropes and certain themes that are popping up, then I know that I should probably avoid it. And so there are a multitude of ways that you can have fun choosing your TBR. Even if it seems unhinged, just do it, because you never know what books you're gonna find. And I know for me, I have a couple of pretty unhinged ways that I'm going to be finding books to read in the balance of this year and next, which I'm super excited about. And honestly, it really does keep my passion for reading up by just kind of doing these unique, wacky ideas. And so I highly encourage you to do the same. And then recommendation number 6, let's talk about it. And that is diversify your feed. And I'm sure you have heard this before, but if you are only following really large creators or the same types of creators, you are likely to see these same books mentioned over and over again. And I won't say that all large creators are only talking about new releases or only talking about very popular books, because I do think there's a lot of large creators out there that are very conscious about what they read and what they share on the internet. So I want to make that very clear. And again, there's nothing wrong with following really popular book creators, but I really want you to look at, like, do all of those people look the same? Do all of those people have the same type of background? Do all of those people have the same point of view on those popular books? I think it's fine for people to talk about new releases. I know I like reading new releases as a reader, or talking about popular books, right? But sometimes those people, if you diversify your feed, they're all gonna have different point of views on that book. So, you know, one person may be like, this is the best book in the world, and someone else may be like, this book was trash, okay, and here's why. So just make sure you're being conscious of that, because the algorithm gives you what you interact with. So if you are only interacting with certain type of creators or certain type of content, the algorithm is going to keep feeding that to you. And so to get out of that, again, here comes point and recommendation number one, sliding in here, is if you know that you like a certain type of book or genre or theme, someone has created content out there on it. I promise you. So go into Book Talk, go into YouTube, type that in the search bar, and I bet you, I would bet you US dollars, hard cash, that you will find a new book creator that you have never seen before, or you will find a book that you have never seen before. But I do have some recommendations on how to curate and how to diversify your feed. And so the first one, I want you to find someone who aligns with your book taste. Okay, and I know this video is about finding your book taste, but it's also about honing in on your book taste, okay? So you need to know just a little bit about what you like in books. Again, that's where number one slides its way in here. But I've found that when I follow one or two people that have similar book tastes to me, that sometimes it'll have me picking up books that I didn't think I would like, and then I end up loving them. Okay, because I hear somebody else talk about it, I'm like, I'm not gonna like that. And then I hear that person that we typically have similar book tastes talk about it, and I'm like, okay, they have a different POV on that, and that actually sounds really interesting, so let me figure it out for myself. But granted, sometimes it still just doesn't work out, but I gave a book a chance that I probably wouldn't have any other way. And then the next type of creator I want you to find is someone who may not necessarily align with your book taste, but they read very niche books and they read very diversely. So for example, I do not read a lot of romance. Okay, I don't know why, that's just how it goes. But I love following Shaughnessy because her niche is romance, and like romance specifically about people of color, Black authors. And I love following her because even though I don't read romance often, I know that if I do pick up a romance, I'm going straight to her. And it's because she reads books that I don't see like a lot of people talking about, and because I think part of the reason I don't read a lot of romance is because a lot of the popular ones just don't seem that interesting to me, or I pick them up and I'm like, this is boring as hell. And so I feel like when I have a better breadth of books to pick from, I'll probably have a better chance of finding something that I like. I implore you to try and find some creators like that for yourself. And then the third type of creator I want you to find, and I feel like some people are gonna feel a type of way about me saying this, find a creator you like just for the vibes. There is something to this thought of comfort creators, okay? Someone who makes you feel relaxed, someone who brings a lot of joy and energy on the camera, someone that makes you maybe excited or just intrigued about reading or their life. And another reason I'm recommending that type of creator is because I think it can help with some of your hype fatigue and getting tired of seeing some of the same stuff talked about on the internet. Because I think when you find those creators that you just really vibe with, they could be talking about a grain of sand on the beach. They could be talking about their imaginary friend or a frog they had as a pet. You don't care, but it makes you feel joy and it makes you feel relaxed. I think it's important for everybody to have that type of creator on the internet. And I think there's a lot of booktubers especially that provide that feeling. So definitely make sure that those people are included in your feed. And then the last thing I want to talk about when it comes to diversifying your feed, this doesn't just mean creators. I think it also means what platforms you are taking in content from. So maybe you are getting fatigued from BookTube. Maybe you're getting fatigued from Book Talk. Try a different reading platform. Try Fable, maybe. Try Reddit. Has a lot of good stuff when it comes to book recommendations. Try Discord. There are a lot of other platforms that people are exploring when it comes to book recommendations. And so I think sometimes maybe the fatigue isn't coming in strictly from the books that are being recommended. Maybe it's just coming in from the platforms itself and how those types of content is generated. So maybe just try a different platform. And so those are my 6 tips and recommendations on how to find and hone in on your personal book taste. And honestly, if you made it to the end of this video, you're a trooper, because one thing about me, my ass hurts right now, but I appreciate you so much if you made it to the end, as always. And let me know down below if you have any other tips that you would recommend for people who may be watching this video on how to find their personal reading taste, or just leave maybe a niche book recommendation down below, or a book that you haven't heard anybody talk about that you just think is like phenomenal, chef's kiss, best thing ever, and you're like, why is nobody talking about it? And if you don't want to leave a book recommendation or a tip of some kind, that's okay. Leave a star emoji of some sort if you made it to the end of this video. And as always, if you made it here, you are my absolute favorites, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.